This is Lecture 3 for Community Relations and Cultural Issues. The Subculture of the Police. No part of this lecture may be used without the express permission of Professor Rick Ramosek. This lecture will introduce you to the subculture of police. It is a society built on tradition and a sense of honor. You are judged by your decision-making, treatment of people, protection of your partner, and your ability to do your job. One of the most important elements that contributes to successful police work is the selection and training of proper people. Quality persons can overcome many obstacles. In a study done in 1988, where Slater and Reiser did a comparative study of factors influencing police recruitment, it was found that the top reason why people picked policing as a career was a variety of work. In the list of the top reasons, variety was top, then responsibility, serve the public, adventure, security, pay, benefits, advancement, retirement, and prestige. In George Cole's book, Criminal Justice in America, he quotes a study that looks at the number of sworn officers in America. The majority of sworn officers, over 300,000, are male. Females comprise of only about 35,000 officers. The white population of officers is approximately 280,000 officers. African Americans comprise about 30,000, Hispanics about 20,000, and other is listed as about 5,000. Recruitment of police candidates comes from a variety of sources, from colleges, job fairs, the military. In California, a new pension offering has many public safety personnel retiring at age 50, so many departments are scrambling to try to fill those positions. Some police departments have had to hire substandard recruits to fill those positions, and unfortunately that's not good for the public. Is it good to have an educated police force? Some believe there are numerous advantages. First of all, going to college inculcates responsibility. Students are responsible to turn in papers on time, be at certain places at certain times, and to learn how to manage time and deal with deadlines. It also helps with communication and coping with stress and handling other difficult situations. You learn to work with your classmates, which means you'll have to work with a wide variety of persons from different backgrounds and other genders. Others believe empirical evidence doesn't prove that any advantage exists. Educated police are not superior as seen from the client viewpoint. They may have fewer citizen complaints, but they may have more internal complaints. Currently, in California, most police academies are certified by Peace Officer Standards and Training and funded by community college monies. Even if there's regional training centers, most of them are associated with a community college of some sorts. All in all, there's still little clear-cut evidence that college-educated cops do any better job than those who lack degrees. However, there was a study done in Miami that shows that a good liberal arts studies background leads to better ethical decision-making on the street. Let's look at the transition of policing where women and minorities are allowed to work in a white-dominated. This came about because of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. In 1988, a case tested the Buffalo Police Department's personnel policies, contending they discriminated against minorities. The judge ruled that discriminatory practices had to be eliminated, and that hiring should reflect percentage of qualified minorities in the available workforce. Minorities in policing are also affected by the Equal Employment Opportunity Act of 1972, that it shall be unlawful for an employer to fail or refuse to hire or to discharge any person or otherwise discriminate against a person with respect to compensation, terms, conditions, privileges of employment based on the individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This is listed in Section 703 of Title 7, 42 United States Code. Do minority officers face any different pressures than do the majority member police officers? That's a really good question. I would assume that if you were the first black female at your police department, that you would definitely have pressures on you compared to your counterparts. One of the things that we're finding is we are getting rid of the term policewoman and policeman. It's being replaced by police officer, so that it represents both genders. Women in police work. Again, women comprise about 6% of the job population, and their role is restricted by social barriers including gender conflict, jealousy, stereotyping. What happens is anytime there's a new group that comes into the policing subculture, the old guard or the majority begin to worry that these people are going to get promoted quicker. And if you are a white male who's been there for 15, 20 years and have not been promoted, you're going to be highly jealous of any new group coming in. And so there's going to be administrative barriers, including underrepresentation at senior administrative levels. And there's going to be selective utilization of their skills and training because of that. What does research show about women in policing? Well, first of all, they're less likely to use a firearm in a violent confrontation than male officers. They're more emotionally stable than male officers. They're less likely to seriously injure a citizen than a male officer, and they're no more likely to suffer injuries than their male partners. Yet, they continue to be able to do the job at the same level, making the same number of arrests and closures of cases as their male counterparts. Let's start to talk about subculture. What is it, first of all? Subculture is a subdivision of our national culture defined by occupation or ethnicity, class, or residence, where you live. It forms functioning group unity of shared values, beliefs, and attitudes. And this leads the police, because of their shared expectations about human behavior, to act a certain way. Now, the way the police act is based upon what's called working personality. Any person who works in an occupation has a working personality, a certain way that you act at work. The way you observe, the way you talk, the way you present yourself may all be done at work in a different way than you would in your private life. Two important elements in police working personality include danger and authority. Let's talk about danger first. Police are especially attentive to signs of potential violence because they work in a dangerous situation. Watch an officer when he stops a vehicle and he gets out of his vehicle and he does a quick scan of the area to see if there's anything that could put him in danger before he approaches the car that he's just stopped. It starts all the way back with a socialization process back in the academy that teaches recruits to be cautious and suspicious. There is an orientation toward watching and questioning, which can contribute to tension and conflict in contacts with the public. We teach officers in the academy not to carry something in their gun hand for fear that if they have something in their gun hand and a danger arises, they're not going to be able to respond. All the way back in the police academy where I worked at one time, if we caught a recruit with something in their gun hand while in uniform, they were required to give us 50 push-ups. You can imagine after cranking out a couple of hundred push-ups that gets drilled into your psyche and you never forget to keep your gun hand clear. Police officers are constantly on edge, watching for unexpected dangers on and off duty, and this could cause tension with other people around them. Authority. Police officers, a symbol of authority, still have a low pay occupational status. They're not considered as at the same occupational level as an attorney or a doctor. They often have to be assertive in establishing their authority with citizens, and this can lead to conflict, hostility, and perhaps overreaction and police brutality at times. Officers are also expected to remain detached, neutral, and unemotional even when challenged and in situations of conflict. Now, it's true that in general the public supports the police, but the police perception of the public is that they're hostile. So officers tend to socialize primarily with other officers. Now, this occurs also because if you're working a graveyard shift and you want to go out after work to have a drink or to have a meal, who are you going to call at 6:30 in the morning that's going to be willing to do that with you? It's probably going to be the other officers on your shift. The other thing is officers are so identified with their jobs that members of the public frequently treat them as police even when off duty. If they're at a party, people come up to them and ask them questions about policing or ask them about traffic tickets or police incidents that they've been involved in and ask for advice, etc. Because of situations like that, it increased the need for bonding and socialization between officers, their families, and the families of other officers. And this develops group identity, but keeps the police isolated. Characteristics of the police culture because of that include clannishness, hang out together, secrecy. Well, I'll tell you that officers are not allowed to talk to the public about some of the cases they may be working, and the only ones they could talk to are other officers. Isolation from others based upon what we call the blue curtain, where you have this curtain between you and others, and there's a certain belief that you don't talk about what happens on the job outside of your peer group. The police subculture has core beliefs. These are that police are the only real crime fighters, that only the police understand the police. Hence, citizens should never be allowed to question what the police do or to discipline the police. Loyalty to one another is paramount. The war on crime can only be won by bending a few rules. The public doesn't support the police, and patrol work is the pits, detective work is glamorous. Cynicism in policing. This is an attitude of scornfulness and bitterness. It's a belief that all actions are taken by individuals for selfish reasons, that no one does things just because it's the right thing to do, including other officers. This sort of attitude increases with years of service if you don't get promoted, especially if you're a college graduate. And we find that many military-type training academies cause self-cynicism. The bottom line is you see people at their worst, and you develop certain attitudes about people which become prejudices. But officers also will start to look at other officers who are trying to do a good job and tend to believe that they're only doing it so that they can be promoted or get special assignments and that they're brown-nosers. Let's look at job stress. At one time, police officers had the highest suicide rate in the nation. Working environment and subculture affect physical and mental health in forms of marital problems, health problems, and drinking problems. Let's talk about 3 types of police stress. The first being external stress, which is caused by the real threats and dangers on the job. The next would be internal or organizational stress, which is produced by the paramilitary character of police forces, including odd hours, changing schedules, detailed rules and procedures that you're supposed to know. The third is professional stress, which could be brought on by a number of different characteristics, including not being able to adjust to group-held values. So how does this socialization process of a police recruit begin? It starts in the academy, where we strip away your personality and we tell you that everything's based upon a team effort, where your self-worth is always challenged and where you must meet the expectations of the group. You have to back up your partner and show no fear. Don't let people talk back to you, and most of all, don't be a snitch. I'm going to jump off track for a second and just talk a little bit about officers who use racial slurs. First of all, studies have found that persons who use racial slurs in private usually use them in highly stressful situations, which leads to termination and suspension. It's highly unprofessional for officers to use racial slurs in private or public. A Bay Area Police Department in California had a white police chief suspend a few black officers for using racial slurs amongst themselves. The chief said that there's only one standard, and that it's unprofessional for officers, no matter what color they are, to use slurs. Police departments have been slow to address issues of stress, but many have developed counseling and liberal disability rules and other mechanisms to help. Much of this has been dealt with in the contractual process handled between the union and the cities. Another way to deal with stress, cynicism, and other problems is by forming minority officer associations to represent group-held values. I showed you a slide earlier which basically showed that the majority of sworn officers in the United States are white male. Many times the viewpoint of minority officers is never looked at, and therefore they form groups so that they can get their message across. Police unions. Minority officers have become part of police unions and associations. However, statistics show that the white male officers have the majority numbers, so they can control the unions. This is not the case in a few cities in California where minority officers have been successful in running for union board positions within their department. Unfortunately, from personal experience, if you do not represent the viewpoint of white officers on hiring and promotion, you will not be voted into the union position. Unions have become much stronger since the year 2000. They have developed political action committees to represent their viewpoints in the writing and supporting of legislation. They have lobbied for legislation to protect officers and provide a fair process when they are accused of misconduct. Unfortunately, in some municipalities, this has led to corruption, where officers can do what they please and politicians are slow to respond because they want to get that PAC money for their next election. To summarize, police are in a unique subculture by the nature of their occupation. They must trust each other for physical protection, no matter what the interpersonal relationship is that they have. Because of the nature of their work, the culture places high value on loyalty. And this means that officers are deterred from reporting misconduct, which we'll speak about in the next lecture. Police work is high stressed because officers are constantly have to deal with the public, their peer group, and departmental policy. This, combined with the ever-changing population they serve and the need to be able to handle a variety of calls with little training, can be quite stressful.
Now that you know all this, it's important to know that you should ride along with any potential employer to make sure that your personality fits with the personality of that department, because those different departments are going to be unique.
This is the end of this lecture.